coming up, lionfish, starfish and other invasive species threaten native marine life in Turkish waters. But is eradicating them the answer? We know that human overfishing and exploitation has led to this. And now, according to some people, this project just wants to come in and kill and destroy all the animals.
It's not about killing animals, and it's not about eliminating a species. It's about keeping a balance.
As research into a cure for dementia continues, scientists look to one of the planet's most venomous creatures for help. But first, hundreds of people in Bangladesh die after a bite from the Aedes aegypti mosquito in a dengue outbreak that's unlike any the country has ever seen.
All over the Bangladesh, in 64 districts at that moment, we have dengue.
This is Just 2 Degrees on TRT World. Bangladesh has experienced its worst dengue outbreak ever, with more than 1,000 people having died since the start of the year. The virus is spread by the Aedes aegypti mosquito, which thrives in warmer weather and lays its eggs in stagnant water. It's no surprise Bangladesh has seen repeat infections. There's been irregular flooding and hotter temperatures this year. The situation's prompted health warnings from the World Health Organization, which says climate change is resulting in the fastest spread of not just dengue, but other mosquito-borne diseases like yellow fever and chikungunya.
ডেঙ্গি যে শুধুমাত্র বাংলাদেশে হচ্ছে ব্যাপারটি এরকম নয়। পৃথিবীর অনেক ট্রপিক্যাল এবং সাবট্রপিক্যাল কান্ট্রিতে ডেঙ্গুটি কিন্তু এবার হচ্ছে। এটার সাথে গ্লোবাল ক্লাইমেট চেঞ্জ এবং জলবায়ু পরিবর্তনের একটি সম্পর্ক আছে। আপনি জানেন যে এডিস মশা ডেভেলপমেন্ট, গ্রোথ অ্যান্ড ডেভেলপমেন্টের জন্য একটা সুইটেবল বা অপটিমাম টেম্পারেচার দরকার পড়ে। ভাইরাসের মাল্টিপ্লিকেশনের জন্য একটি অপটিমাম টেম্পারেচার দরকার পড়ে। যেই টেম্পারেচারটা গ্লোবাল ক্লাইমেট চেঞ্জের কারণে অথবা তাপমাত্রা বৃদ্ধির কারণে সেটি উপযোগী একটি তাপমাত্রা, উপযোগী আর্দ্রতা পেয়ে যাচ্ছে।
Worries about the impacts of global warming are increasing, especially as more and more of the world experiences higher temperatures. And this year's trend of severe heat waves has extended into October, especially in Europe, where people in Spain saw unseasonably warm days that felt more like summer than fall, at between 6 and 10 degrees Celsius higher than normal. The capital, Madrid, saw temperatures as high as 32 Celsius, and in southern Spain, they went as high as 37, putting parts of the country at risk of wildfires.
Justo cuando venía caminando para acá, estaba pensando con el cambio climático nos va a terminar matando porque no es normal que esté haciendo ese tipo de calor en este tiempo del año.
Totalmente, aunque bueno, yo creo que está demostrado en los registros de hielo y en toda la documentación científica. Y por ejemplo, mi abuelo hablaba de heladas mucho más habituales y nevadas invernales mucho mayores que mi padre apenas vio y que yo he visto solo una vez.
Sí, es verdad que a finales de septiembre se habla del veranillo de San Miguel, que le suben un poco las temperaturas, pero eran temperaturas muy suaves y muy agradables. Y lo que estamos sufriendo ahora es un calor de verano, típico de finales de agosto.
There is an organization that's been trying to ensure the welfare of working animals for decades. It's called SPANA, or the Society for the Protection of Animals Abroad. The charity says rising poverty and inequality and climate change put the survival of horses, donkeys and camels at severe risk and also threaten the livelihoods and future of families who rely on the animals. Your organization's vice president, Lady Slynn, on the company's website, talks about teaching children to have respect for the donkey. What exactly does that respect look like? What does she mean?
I think that's a really good question. I think what we aim to do as an organisation at SPANA is to really talk about what animal welfare means, and that actually what we want to promote is a good quality of life for working animals, and an understanding that they're sentient beings. They're beings that we want to connect with, that we want to support, and ensure that their lives matter. And last year we worked with different schools across the globe, children who are the future generations of not owners, just owners, but also policymakers, and where we worked with just under 90,000 children talking about animal welfare and that importance. So whether it's a donkey, a horse, a mule, an oxen, a camel, an elephant, or any of the working animals that support communities across the globe, their lives matter and they are sentient beings that we need to respect and support.
I guess SPANA sees tons of issues of human greed prioritized over the welfare of animals. What is it like getting people to care about this issue?
Well, I think the world is a complex place, and I think actually, you know, often people that we work with, it's a lack of awareness and a lack of knowledge, and really we see our role as imparting some of that knowledge and support, and also access to services. So I think it's really not about judgment, it's about understanding. And if you can understand different people and their needs, hopefully we can also provide information of why their animals matter and how that connection can become even stronger.
I know you're a welfare network, but there's a perspective that animals should not be in these situations at all. What do you say to people who have that perspective?
I think the reality of it is that many communities across the globe depend very heavily on that partnership with their animal. So whether it's donkeys carrying water in order that girls can go to school, or a camel working in a brick kiln to support the building of new homes. I think the reality of it is, how do we behave towards those animals? In the same way, how do we behave to the people that we work with? And I think it's about responsible, appropriate, ensuring we look at the 5 freedoms, or now the 5 domains, and think about these animals as sentient beings. So doing the very best that we can to support those animals with the communities they work within. And these animals are very often really trusted and valued and cared for. But there are other issues that are impacting some of those communities, which I think we're here to support and understand better.
Over the last century or so since you've been in operation, would you say that your organization's made the kind of impact it's wanted to?
Gosh, I think with anything like this, the world unfortunately doesn't stand still, and Span has been part of that evolution. We all had a bit of a surprise with the global pandemic, where basically we pressed pause, but actually it was a big shock to the world. That shock also impacted working animals. And so did we make the impact? I think we've got a lot more to do. I think the situation for working animals, as it is for so many communities, is quite perilous. We've got a situation with climate change, with shifting political and economic uncertainties, and also, we've got growing poverty. That will undoubtedly have an impact on people, but also massively on working animals, which is where we aim to bridge that gap. So have we had an impact? Yes, absolutely. Have we got lots more to do? Very definitely.
Turkey's Marmara Sea connects the Mediterranean and Black Seas, and as a transitional zone, it has a diverse marine ecosystem and is a vital gateway for marine organisms to migrate. But according to the UN Development Programme, there are 105 species of invasive plants and animals that threaten native ones there, including lionfish, starfish, pufferfish, and water hyacinth. Many of them came to the Marmara Sea on boats using the waterway's maritime shipping routes and survive in the region due to warmer waters. The threat, especially to local shellfish populations, is also threatening livelihoods in Turkey that depend on them. What is it about Turkish waters that draws these animals to the region, and what is the global warming connection?
We see these invasive alien species. We see a lot of the alien species in general around the world. So animals move, they're moved by floods or storms. But what we're seeing is that human intervention causes them to move farther and in a more threatening way than would have happened without that. And largely it's due to the shipping trade. So Turkey is blessed by being a global commercial power with a big involvement in the maritime trades and lots of ports. But with that come big freighters that have in their steel hulls these using ballast water. So they use tons and tons of ballast water, and they suck it in one place and discharge it in another. And lots of times that includes larvae, eggs, small creatures would then grow into big creatures. And what we see is now an increasing spread of these invasive ones. So the invasive ones are destructive, and what they do is they arrive in Turkey, on Turkey's coast, and they find a completely different environment than what they're used to. And the situation is here. There are very few predators for some of these invasive species. So they come in, they reproduce very quickly, they multiply fast, they adapt, and they gobble up the riches of Turkey's a maritime life, the fish, in the case of the lionfish and the pufferfish. And in the case of the starfish, which we are focused on in our event in the Marmara Sea, the starfish devour mussels and other shellfish. So what we see are they are a big threat to what is quite a profitable enterprise for Turkey's fisher people and those who trade in fisheries and shellfish. So with climate change, we see waters warming. So it can provide, both a newly hostile environment for native species, but also give a boon to these destructive invasive alien species that come in and enjoy those new waters all the more and reproduce, eat, consume. So this is why we're implementing this project together with the Ministry of Agriculture and Forestry to combat invasive alien species. And it's easier said than done, I have to say, because once they've arrived, it's very hard to get rid of them for the reasons I said. They lead a happy life. No one is coming to eat them, but they're very happy to eat the delicious fish and mussels along Turkey's coast. And the threat there, it sounds funny, and starfish, anyone who grew up with SpongeBob SquarePants has I think a soft spot in their heart for starfish, for the starfish character there, Patrick Star, that they're very cute. That's what comes from the sea. So it's often hard to convince people that this is a dangerous entry. The lionfish, similar. They are very attractive tropical fish, but they're very dangerous to local biodiversity and then to the local economy.
So what exactly is the objective of this Turkish Agriculture Ministry UNDP partnership? Are they trying to kill all the starfish?
Well, we're doing a number of things. So not everything is about, killing them, but I think the ultimate goal is really to prevent further invasions by destructive species and then to control the ones that are there. So a lot of it is policy work, looking at assessing the situation, collecting data, understanding the trends, and then adopting the laws and policies that can help to fix things. A second part is informing people, and that's partly why we organize these events, these contests. We've had two to see who can, spear the most lionfish, and third is really the I think the most where the most impact is to control, to prevent, to remove, and then to repair ecosystems that have been damaged by invasive alien species. So, with the lionfish, it's maybe an easier task, although still a hard one, because lionfish is good to eat, is edible, and people are not yet familiar with the delicious nature of the lionfish. So the purpose of the events we've had has been not just to catch the lionfish, but to cook them and to show that they can be transformed into lots of delicious meals. And so we had very popular lionfish tacos, lionfish ceviche, and lionfish soup at the different events we've had. So I think that's something that can really catch on, because if people realize it is a delicious fish, there is, an expanding global palate. The lionfish is a threat in lots of locations around the world. So to turn it into something that you would then harvest commercially and sell for restaurants and people in supermarkets, that's one aim. To create incentives for people to, yes, indeed, as you say, to kill or to try to control the species. For starfish, it's different, because you can't eat a starfish. And then I think people look at it, they say, oh, very nice starfish in the sea. So then the aim is to collect, but also to inform people so they know, that this is a threat. The more, I think, weighty and longer term undertaking of the project focuses on exactly this issue of ballast water. So there is a ballast water convention, a new international convention that governs how these freighter ships should use ballast water, take it on and discharge it. It's a new convention. It came into force in 2017, and Turkey is a signatory. So one of the efforts is to help Turkey, implement the terms of the convention. But really, the larger goal is to ensure that globally, and then in Turkey is blessed with the seas all around, is to ensure that the provisions of the convention are adhered to, and we can get these freighter ships to stop discharging the ballast water. And there is another threat called biofouling. So biofouling is when you have lots of creatures growing on the hull of a ship. And these big ships tend to have a very diverse, microorganisms growing on their hulls, to also have proper care taken of ships, because when they move around, then it's very easy for the eggs, the larvae, whatever, to drop off of the hull and start breeding wherever they land. And then one that isn't a sea creature, but a sea plant, the water hyacinth, which sounds very lovely, but it is a plant that grows very, very fast, and it currently clogs rivers where they reach the sea. For example, in Asi River in Hatay, it can prevent the free movement of water, but also impede the healthy growth and diversity of fish in there, and so also have a negative impact on the fishing that can be done there for livelihood. So that's the aim. It's a very difficult challenge, I think, because wherever these invasive species manage to gain a foothold, it's very hard to get them out.
Louisa, there is another perspective here. We know that human overfishing and exploitation has led to this in the first place, and now, according to rights activists, we just want to come in and kill and destroy even more animals and plants, even though they are considered invasive species. How are these people meant to feel about this project that comes in to kill these invasive animals?
Yeah, I think that really what people need to understand is that biodiversity is a balance, that nature is a balance, so that where these invasive species have come from, there's been a balance where there is a predator, there's prey, and so they don't have explosive population growth. What's happening is that it's the artificial intervention of humans, for example, through these ships. And it happens also where I'm from in America. I've spent a lot of time on lakes in Canada where commercial boats, just motorboats, people also have waters there that they move from one water body to another. So it's partly a knowledge thing, but I think that's the important thing. It's not about killing animals, and it's not about eliminating a species. It's about keeping a balance. And, really, we can only keep a balance where there are predators and prey, and where one species doesn't all of a sudden become dominant, because it can have very dramatic consequences. And just one example, you can have an invasive species that overfilters the water, so there's too much sunlight that goes too far down in a water body, and that leads to the elimination of indigenous species of fish, and then all the birds and the other animals that depend on it. So I think people need to remember the food chain and the natural balance of ecosystems, and take an ecosystem approach to the problem. So yes, not to worry too much about the cute cartoon-like starfish. It will prosper in its own native environment, but this is a different native environment, and it can lead to a huge chain of destruction if it's not checked in time.
A recent study suggests that box jellyfish, whose venom is considered among the most toxic in the world, can learn from past experiences. Scary, right? But no doubt an interesting conclusion, considering the gelatinous sea creatures don't have brains. Researchers from the University of Copenhagen say the sea wasps, as they're also known, can even demonstrate complex learning abilities. It's now being investigated whether the jellyfish could help us understand dementia in humans. Dementia is an overall term to describe a collection of symptoms like loss of memory, cognitive abilities, and problem-solving skills. Just give us a bit of context here of jellyfish as one of the oldest organisms that we know of, and they've survived so many eons, yet they do not have a brain, as far as I understand.
Yeah, so jellyfish are in the phylum called Cnidaria, and we estimate that they have been doing their evolutionary thing towards their current state for about 600 million years. And that means that, like, we've all been evolving the same amount of time. It's just what we're becoming. And so they have found a really nice structure and genome and functions that work for them to be the way they are. Now, they're highly diverse. Jellyfish, we can never say that one jellyfish is the same as all. Highly diverse. And so each of them has adapted and evolved structures and functions and genomic and protein level characteristics that make them what they are today. And the interesting thing is, even though they're so ancient, they are the closest thing to us humans and other what we call bilaterians, in terms of animals. So beyond jellyfish, everything is just very weird, like sponges, types of animals, but they are actually considered our sister organism.
Very interesting. At this University of Kiel, University of Copenhagen study looks at specifically at box jellyfish, which I believe has some of the most poisonous toxins in the world. What did they find about this jellyfish that was so interesting and linked to, I don't know, the study of dementia in human beings?
So yes, that is true that box jellyfish are famous for their, some of them have a deadly sting. And I worked a lot with the deadly ones in my career, but I've also worked with ones in the same family as the one that this study is working on, and that's the Tripodelidae family. And it's almost like a trade-off evolutionarily. These box jellyfish are extremely tiny. You probably saw in the paper, there are a couple of, where they're millimeters big, whereas the deadly ones tend to be more like centimeters big. And so you have this trade-off for size, but complexity in the behavior of the ones in the Tripodelidae family. They have much more complex sexual reproductive behavior. I studied courtship in that family, in basically a cousin of the paper, the species in the paper. And they have highly behavior in their feeding and their courtship and their sexual dimorphism, and also in their ability to use their eyes. Now, all box jellyfish have these highly developed lensed eyes that actually have a retina, and that can, we've known this for a long time, they can detect shapes, and not just black and white, but they can avoid obstacles and things like that. And that's very different from the other jellyfish, which are just have pigment spots that can detect dark and light. And so what this group has done is they have taken something that we've already known these jellyfish can do, and they've actually taken a neurophysiological approach to saying why that might be. And it's a really interesting approach to show that they are forming those associations between the stimuli and the responses using these neural networks.
Human beings do this via central brain. Jellyfish don't have this. They have a decentralized, nervous system. So what's the link between that and curing dementia?
Well, so I would say that it's a bit premature to mention that we can use this discovery for curing dementia. However, anytime you discover something, this sort of a neural system that in and of itself, the evolution of the neuron, those neural cells, that in and of itself is complex. So you can never say it's a simple neural system, because the neuron is one of the most complex cells that exist. But they use ancient systems in that they can send messages back and forth between the neurons, whereas ours are so complex that we can only go one way in most of our neurons. It's very rare that any neurons in our body, but the ones that remain that do have these bilateral abilities, those ones are sort of generalized in that if you could take a system like that didn't require your central nervous system, like your brain, to actually have any involvement. It's like when you get hit on the knee by the doctor and you kick, your brain doesn't know that's happening. That's just your nerves and the peripheral nervous system doing that. And so we are still capable of all of those things that don't require our central nervous system. We just have retained those from ancient systems. And so the fact that the jellyfish are using those ancient neuropeptides and neural signaling systems and these clusters of nerves that we call ganglia that are in a sense like they're what came before the evolution of a brain. And so where these clusters of eyes, these ropalia, amounts of ganglion clusters that essentially operate sort of like, and we have argued this with other jellyfish experts, almost like four little brains on the jellyfish, because everything, their response to behavior, their escape mechanism, their following prey, All of that is facilitated by a nice coordination between the movement of their tentacles and their ability to rotate their eyes 360 degrees and see inside their clear body and outside into their environment.
And that was our show. But before we go, here are visuals from Switzerland's glaciers. A Swiss Academy of Sciences panel reports that the glaciers have lost 10% of their volume in the last 2 years. Researchers say the ice loss was due to a winter with little snowfall and high summer temperatures.